Pauline as well. Just to let you know, Pauline and everyone, as I've just explained to everyone, that my colleague Susie Matheson is on right on cue, is on the line observing today. Probably going to switch her video off, though. Susie, you're very welcome to keep it on. But we're the same cohort, and we're just going to major forward, if that's okay. Is everyone okay with that? Thumbs up. Okay, brilliant. Right, I'm going to go to shared screen, and as always, this is not supposed to be a lecture at all. It is, and I've been really pleased with the level of interaction that we've all had over the last. Well, this is the 4th week actually. Over the last 4 weeks or so, I've been really pleased. So thank you very much for getting really stuck in. And we can go anywhere you want, where you want the conversation, because it's not lecture. It's about learning and getting the most value out of this course. So anyway, I'll just get off my pedestal and use the information to guide us. Now, has anyone seen this photo before? Have I introduced the photo to you before? Have I? One has, I think, because Emily, you were on a previous call. Okay, so don't concentrate too much on that, but because I'll be asking questions about it later on. So anyway, so summing up on, someone's put something in the chat. Hang on a second. Is that for there we go. Right. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So, by the way, just summing up from last week on passive lead generation, we talked a little bit about customer journey, attracting stuff to our website, converting it into opportunity, and then retaining them as clients. And I only skimmed the surface of that because there's such a lot to cover. Don't take any of your channels for granted. Test for what's working, because often. And I had this discovery, frankly, just this morning, is that what I thought was on my LinkedIn wasn't how someone else was interpreting it. And so every day's a school day. So I encourage you to have these conversations often with people that you trust, and I very much trusted the person I was talking to this morning. We talked a little bit about KPIs, not vanity metrics like likes and comments can be on your LinkedIn post or Facebook or whatever it happens to be. Real engagement, how many views, shares is probably a good one. Yes, of course, likes and comments are important, especially responding to them. But actually, it's about engagement and this whole so what about, is it delivering something for you, and a call to action. Now we've got Rebecca Stringer is going to be joining us a little bit later on to talk about data. She's going to come on the call. One of the big light bulb moments for me was that you don't have to be a multinational to benefit from data. Even a just me, like some of my colleagues, can benefit from learning about data. It's often very sobering, but it's actually really important to see where the results are coming from. Okay, right. Did anyone have a go at social selling index? Did anyone Google their SSI? Does anyone want to come off of mute, tell us what they discovered? Yes or no is a yeah.
I was trying and I was asked to pay and I didn't go. I didn't understand how to get in there.
Okay. So right. Okay. Well, would it help if Liga maybe separately we could have a different session? I'll run you through how to do that. It's enlightening. Lisa.
Yeah, Liga, it's quite easy. If you Google "get my LinkedIn SSI" and click on the first item that comes up in the search that's actually from LinkedIn, you should be able to get it. But I'm struggling now because I'm struggling to log in, Keith, but I was actually quite impressed. Do you remember I said it last time?
What you told me what it was, you mean?
Yeah.
I remember you telling me what it was, but I can't actually recall what it was.
Neither can I.
Welcome to my world.
You were either 70 or 74, I think, Lisa.
She was very high, yeah.
I've got a weird memory for numbers. So you
74, 75, Lisa.
I just haven't got a memory, full stop.
I was a disappointing 60, but there you go. Lots to work on.
Sorry, it wasn't necessarily a competition amongst us folks, though.
Oh,
I
it
recognise. You can tell who's in sales, though. You can tell who's in sales because it instantly becomes a competition. So that's interesting in its own right.
I've gone up. I'm 76 now.
Fantastic. Okay. What's important is that you've forged a reference point, if you like, and that's your sort of ground zero or reference point zero going forwards to see if you're making progress or not. I do think it's interesting and kind of relevant. Well done. Thank you for that. Again, then we summed up, we talked about active lead gen, which is getting the right pitch. We've worked on pitches earlier on for your company's sort of offer, whatever it is that you kind of do. It really takes time and it needs practice. We talked about upfront contracts in making cold calls or even in meetings, getting agreements with people, that sort of informal but slightly formal. If I do this, will you do that? And I think that's a really powerful piece of communication. And then getting commitment to whatever the next step should be. Should it be meeting or a 15-minute Zoom call or whatever it happens to be? And then, moving on to sort of paid ads, which is not something I want to get into. If anyone's interested in that, I can probably get someone to join the call. But I gave the story of, I don't know, and I think I sort of know what I'm doing in that world. But it turns out I didn't. And I spent about 1,500 quid on paid ads on Facebook for my Airbnb in York and didn't get one single bite. So it's worth engaging somebody who actually does this for a living. It really is. It really is. Absolutely. Okay, so Rebecca's going to join us in a bit, and I'm gonna slow things down when she joins. She'll take over for about 15-20 minutes. We'll get a chance to ask questions and then we'll move forward. She's going to be joining us about 4 o'clock. So today we're going to be talking about what the client really wants, and so communication skills, which I think is a life skill in its all its own, though to be able to use it in a sales context, in an influential sort of context, really brings it to life. And how to use communication to not just ask questions, because anyone can ask questions, but how to get to powerful questions to really make you look good, frankly, without trying to look good. And that's much more powerful in my estimation. Then I'm going to give you towards the end a bad demonstration on what that might be, and we'll have questions and wrap up normally. So just to explain where we are in the process, we're just over halfway through typical business to business sales process. Today we're in deal qualification, which is about understanding clients' needs. And the reason we need to do that is, can we deliver? Can we do what they want us to do? And if we can't, what do we do then? Okay, so before we get into it, there are occasions where we can just overcomplicate our own lives. Somebody just wants to phone Liga up, say, I'm coming to the Tate, want you to walk me around the Tate. And we don't need to go through a whole big discovery process. Which is fantastic. That'll be 450 quid next Saturday or the Sunday after, when's best for you, and all of that, because someone's actually ready to buy right there and then. Let's not overcomplicate this, but just in case you need to, so let's get that kind of out of the way. And also remember that because of social media, because of websites and all the rest of it, the chances are very high, 70% in fact, that they've already done some research about you, and you would be amazed what we can find out just by tapping a few keys on the screen about all of us. Can be, when we all understand how much Google, Facebook and all those guys know about us, it can be quite scary. So 70% of research can be done before they actually get speak to you. And let's not put unnecessary barriers in the way of getting a deal done, of winning business, if you like. Just in case anyone's got an e-commerce site, which I don't think we have, something like 70% of all the online transactions last year were abandoned. That goes for Amazon, that goes for whatever it is, but 70% were abandoned for different various reasons. Maybe the technology let us down, maybe they just couldn't get the information they needed. The one that really peeves me the most is where just as you're checking out, they invite you to sign up for an account. And so that's an example of putting a barrier in the way just before somebody wants to buy. And I think John Lewis used to do this, but don't do it now. It's just one of those things that would really irritate me. Okay, right. So thoughts on those five. It may be the first time they've done all this research below the radar, so to speak, on you. You don't even know they've been doing some research about you, unless you've been on your LinkedIn, by the way, and you've checked who's checked out your profile. And that's always interesting as well. So I encourage you to do that anyway. By the way, I'm doing a free event on the 10th of May on LinkedIn. It's basics. It's meant to be basics, but it's open, and you're all very welcome to that. And Pauline, my Wi-Fi might be behaving itself this time. I'm really sorry, but you came along to the last one, the Wi-Fi was misbehaving, so apologies about that. It's okay now. Okay, right. So this might be the first time you've actually interacted with the customer, and at the moment they know more about you than you know about them, and so that's important dynamic to be aware of. So best possible results. So when you have an engagement, whether it's on the phone, video like we are now, I always have, a lot of people will tell you, write down a goal for what you want to achieve at the meeting. Now, for most, should we say, salespeople, fundraisers, business people, the goal would be, well, I want a deal, I want an order of some kind. But in the cold light of day, life doesn't always work like that. I'm not going to repeat the phrase, but sometimes you've got to get to know someone. You've got to build that trust and that relationship before you can actually get to do a deal as such. And so I have two things. I have a best possible result, which is probably let's get a deal, or at least to understand what we've got to do to get a deal. But I also have an MAR, a minimum acceptable result. So we might not be able to do business. They might want to buy something that I just don't do. If someone wanted to buy, get me to do Facebook advertising, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't dream of selling those skills because, that would result in frustration both sides of the table. I'd make a recommendation for sure, but I just wouldn't do that. And I might question why my website or my LinkedIn is throwing up those kind of leads, because we want to get the right kind of leads. So my minimum acceptable result is, will they subscribe to my website, which is free? Will they sign up to my blog? Do they know anyone in their professional network, maybe? I want some referrals. Can we connect on LinkedIn? Something so that we've both got something from that meeting. It's not a complete waste of time, so to speak. And we are actually talking what I call, it's a bit of an American term, but I don't apologize for that, called a discovery process, where we're literally discovering about the client, what their needs are. And where we want to get to, if it's a sort of complex, in fact, any kind of sale, sometimes more complicated getting to this stage than others, is that we want to contextualize, we want to get beyond, I need a channel sales director to sell the next bit of software. We want to understand what's going on in their world where they've decided they need a channel sales director, or what's going on. Why have they phoned me to offer to donate money? Why have they done that? What's going on in their world? We want to know what the more we know, and we'll come to that a little bit later, but the more we know and how to contextualize it or monetize it. What's that problem costing them? in terms of productivity or something like that. But if you're in the arts, I'm just going to throw this out there, Liga, because it's a very subjective thing that I've already shown to you how much I don't necessarily know about the art world, enough to be dangerous maybe, is that if someone's phoning you up and I want to visit and I want to go see the Tate Gallery, you are automatically in frankly, I would ask them what they want to see. I wouldn't necessarily ask them, why do you want to go to the Tate? And but you would certainly want to build some sort of itinerary with them. And it may, on asking those open questions, it may lead you to say, well, actually, rather than just one afternoon going to the Tate, let's go to the Saatchi Museum or Sierra or whatever it happens to be, because there's some other stuff that I can show you that'll be really cool and you'll really enjoy it as well. And I always say, no guessing. I had this conversation with someone else this morning. It's okay to guess. It is, but it's not okay to tell your line manager that you're guessing, or rather, it's not okay not to tell your line manager that you're guessing. So if someone's saying, what have you got coming in next month? Then, you know, in terms of revenue or in terms of donations, whatever it happens to be, you can guess by all means, but you must disclose that it's a guess. When you're guessing about client stuff, you mustn't guess why they're having that problem. You must ask questions, because you must, you know, that old word of assume an assumption. You don't want to make an ass of you and me, because that can come back literally to bite you. Okay, brilliant. So this is what I think. Communicate. Someone probably much cleverer than me said this at some stage in history, but I remember it as communication happens when the other person understands, not when you've tried explaining to someone what you do for a living, but when they can actually understand and repeat back what you do. That's when communication has happened. Right, the communications pie chart is, some of you may recognize this already, the Meridian, Albert Meridian, the sort of pioneer of this level of communication. And hopefully you can see that on your screen, but let's talk about this session, which is, you know, let's say the whole session is 100%. What you can see in the red there, 7% is just the words that I've spoken. That's how little is material in terms of the communication, the thoughts that get generated on this session. That's only 7% is due to the actual words that I've spoken. As you can see in yellow, 55% is the body language that has been displayed, elicited, whatever. And we're on video, so you can only see from my chest upwards. You can see my facial expressions, occasionally hand movements, which may or may not be a distraction. So you can see that you have to be a real sort of expert to really excel at influencing someone over video, or understanding it, communicating, and some nodding heads, which is encouraging. And then 38%, and I think even on a video call, the 38% should be more, because this is in a face-to-face meeting, this pie chart. It'd be interesting if any universities or business schools in particular doing any research for how this pie chart might change given the last 12 months of not being able to meet, of doing stuff in person. That would be a really interesting, actually, Lisa, with the connections that we have into the universities in the West Midlands, I wonder if Aston is doing anything like that. That'd be a really interesting question to ask. Anyway, for the purposes of this pie chart, sorry, Phil, did you?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with another sales leader last week about this. And he was telling me that moving forward, everybody in sales will have to be an expert at selling over video. It is going to be the key skill.
Yeah, excellent.
So you lose all of the body language. I mean, I live in Spain. Body language is the principal language here, right? Every single word and gesture, every single word is accompanied by a gesture.
Yeah.
And everything is going to change. You have to get used to doing it on screen, practice, and whatever you need to do to make it as close as possible as if you were there.
Feel free to sell them my How to Sell and Present over Zoom course. Put that out there. Okay, right. So that 38%, I reckon, will multiply by at least 50% on a call like this. And so it's not the words, but it's the inference, or if I'm leading up, my voice goes up in scale, leading to asking a question, or am I slowing right down, very slow, very deep, to deliver a point, to make a point, and for it to really land. Those are all tools, technologies that we can sort of play with to capitalize on getting everyone to understand as much as possible from delivering a session like this. Okay, so it's verbal and non-verbal. The non-verbal element of understanding or communication is 93%. That's the major takeaway. I believe listening is the most important skill when it comes to understanding, particularly when it comes to we want to understand what our customers or donors want to achieve, and listening is the greatest of all those skills. And yet most people are very, have probably never taken too much time to understand how to listen. And when you ask someone, what does it take to listen, they may not be able to articulate exactly what it takes, but there's a real science to doing that. And it's not simply a matter of being quiet while the other person is talking. It's much more than that, as we're about to find out, actually. Okay, so during your meetings, which always look like this, this I think is the Hotel du Vin in Birmingham, and well worth going to when the world opens up again, by the way. Okay, what do you want the other person to? This is the minimum possible, the best possible result and the minimum acceptable result. What do you want the other person, or what do you want the panel to, because it might be an interview, what do you want them to say, do, or agree as a result of your having the meeting? What do you want them to say, do, or agree? So it might be as simple as, I want them to book for one of my sessions going to the art gallery. I want them to invest £10 to help this homeless youth person. That might be, and whatever it is to you, for you to understand, and that way you'll have more productive meetings. Or if you're a very task-focused person, as when I was on Canary Wharf, 98% of all those personalities don't worry about small talk. They get straight into it, and the meetings tend to be based around what, so what, now what, and actually that's not a bad test. So however you prefer to receive that information, what, so what, now what, and you can reduce 1 hour meetings down to about 8 minutes just by being pretty focused and dispensing with all the chit chat that happens. Which actually, and there is some research going on, and I was talking to someone about this just this morning, in that when it comes to video calls, there is some research going on and some understanding that we have less small talk. We tend to get straight to the point because we don't have that in-person sort of chemistry or experience going on. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but feel free to come on board. If you, Lisa?
Yes, noticed it a lot.
I think it's fine if it's just me and one other person. I think then we can spend some time. The issue is that all of your conversations are open with multiple people. So it just makes for less small talk, because often you don't want to be having that with multiple people. That's more of a one-on-one dialogue.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Sorry, Lisa, what were you going to say?
I was just.
Oh, were you? Okay. At least you're honest. Bill, I know know someone over there. Were you going to say something, or just?
No. I
Okay.
said my piece.
Oh, okay. I'll move on then.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, right. So, okay, one of the sort of discoveries over the last 2 years, only 2 years, is that I didn't talk enough in meetings. I did too much listening. And it should be about 75-25, 75% client talking, 25% you listening, and delivering some value when you do say something. So I came across this diagram, and I can't remember who gave it to me, but it's out there, certainly not mine, around the curve that basically I was too far to the left. I was doing too much listening, almost as though I was a counselor, not a salesperson. This has been a major discovery, and I can actually, looking back on the lens, I can see why I've lost some deals, because I wasn't giving enough value early enough to, if you like, impart my credentials in the sales cycle. And that's a really important realization for me. So to the left of that diagram, you're on the counseling. On the right, as you can see from the circles, you're probably in the lecturing community, where understandably you don't want to be listening as a lecturer. You want to be imparting value and knowledge and all of those things. But there's a happy medium. And for me, now that I've sort of seen this and expressed in that way, again, communication happens when the other person understands. This was really helpful for me, is you certainly want to be less than 50%. And for me, 25% is about right. I certainly don't want to be listening to my voice all the time. Today is an exception, or this afternoon is an exception, but I absolutely want people to sort of come in when they've got something to say. Absolutely. So why are questions important? This guy's a famous sports commentator. Baseball, I think, was his big thing, and he interviewed some of the great and the good in all kinds of sports, baseball in particular. And so great interviews are the ones where you remember the answers and not the questions. Although, with the greatest of respect, Phil, you probably remember a bloke called Robin Day, who used to do question time back in the 1970s, probably. And is that a yes?
Yeah, Brian Walden as well.
Wow, you're really going back. Pauline, you must have had an easy paper round if you can remember Robin Day. Okay, so it's the politicians would, I think, be really nervous in a way that, as much as Andrew Marr is not a bad sort of host, to be face to face with Robin Day, or as you say, Brian Walden, on used to competing show. I think it was a competing show. They would quake in their boots, because he would ask really, really tough questions in a pretty abrupt way and not allow you to escape with some non-answer or deflect or all the other things that, frankly, politicians in particular are doing at the minute. And that is not a blue versus red conversation. This is just an observation. They all do it, frankly. Now,
it's a great place to learn questioning, Keith.
What is
political interviews? Is a wonderful way to learn how to question people.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Okay, right. So one of the questions might be, and I'm coaching someone who got a call who's looking for a new job. And I help them prep for interviews and all the rest of it. And anyway, they got a call out of the blue from a headhunter. And I said, why did they phone you? And they said, actually, I don't know. I didn't ask them. They just told me about this role and I was interested and all the rest of it. So one of the things, and you have to be careful how you ask this kind of stuff, is what made you phone me? What was it about my CV, my resume that made you phone me? And that's them giving you a helping hand. Well, it's your particular experience. Or Liga, if you're in the right place when someone phones you up or sends you a message and you're in dialogue with them, what was it about my service, my experience that, you know, stood out to you, which is so much more polite than why are you phoning me? You know, which, yeah, both achieve the same thing, but one's going to get you more encouraging or positive behavior. But now I can't see her, but Rebecca, is Rebecca in the room or not? I thought I saw her come in just a second ago. Let me just 1 second. Is she there or is she going to come back? Okay, breakout rooms. No. Can't see her. Okay, well, she'll come back in, I'm sure. Right. So why do people buy from you? That's helpful.
Can I say on this point, I've been following Liga on LinkedIn since we joined as a group. And apart from being completely fascinated, Liga, with what you do in your art world anyway, the posts that you have recently sent out are to do with galleries and places reopening, I think, if I've got those correct. Am I right? And saying how lovely it is that we can start to enjoy these creative things. And that would make me, I think I'm a bit of a fan of yours already, but that would make me want to contact you. So not just the content of the post, but the background of your LinkedIn page as well. And some of the things that it's very visual. So that those are, I'd be interested in talking to you more. So I don't know if that helps. I'm just sharing my observation.
Great feedback. Thank you. Thank you for that, Pauline.
I wouldn't know what to talk about, but I'd be interested.
Oh, we should have a chat, definitely.
I know. There's no art in my house though, so perhaps that's why I'm interested.
Oh,
Fantastic. No, that's. Oh, okay, right. Okay, sorry. Rebecca is here. She's waiting for me to let her in, and I just need to find out how to let her in. I didn't see a meeting room anywhere. Right. I might have to come off share. Just 1 second. Ah, there we go. Admit. There we go. Right. I mentioned earlier on that Rebecca Stringer was gonna be joining us, and then, sure enough, here she is. Rebecca, hi. How are you? So I mute everyone.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, really well, really well. Thank you very much for joining us. I've everyone meet Rebecca. Rebecca, actually, what's the point? Rebecca, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I share the screen because I've got a bit of an introduction on my deck anyway?
Yeah, please, absolutely do.
Before we do that, would you mind just introducing me to everybody and what sort of business they've got? Is that okay?
Do you mean you'd like to everyone to introduce themselves?
Yeah, that'd be great, just so
Okay,
I know
yeah.
what sort of businesses there are.
Okay, I'll call out your names just so we don't conflict with each other as I go around the screen, if that's all right. Jules, do you want to come off of mute just briefly what you do to Rebecca?
Hello, I'm Julie Pickering. I work for a charity called Steps to Work. We support the unemployed, but we also run a recruitment agency.
Thank you. And Lisa, next.
Hi, I'm Lisa Jobins. I'm from the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. We are an apolitical, not-for-profit membership organisation.
Fantastic. And Phil?
Right. Hi, Rebecca. I'm Phil Strange. I'm a career sales guy. I specialize in building channel distribution networks for international software companies.
Very good. Thanks. And Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily. I run a community interest company called Open Doors. We aim to reach the most disadvantaged groups in our society.
Lovely, thank you. Liga?
Hi, I'm Liga, and I'm building a company in London that provides tailor-made art tours and consultancy services to purchase craft and art.
I don't know about anyone else, but I didn't quite hear all of that. Something happened on your microphone or or not. Would you mind just repeating that, Liga? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yes, I'm Liga, and I'm working in London. I'm a founder of a company called Vision of Craft that provides tailor-made art tours in London and consultancy to people who want to purchase contemporary craft items.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Pauline.
Hi, I'm Pauline. I work for St Basil's. We're a youth homelessness charity based in the Midlands, helping to support young people between the ages of 16 and 25 from being homeless or the risk of homelessness.
Fantastic. Rebecca, how was that? Over to you now.
Yeah, perfect. So hold on, let me just.
I've made you a co-host, so you should be able to.
Thank you. Share. All right, can you see my screen okay? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk fast, but please feel free to interrupt me, and I'll get in as much as I can, but obviously don't want to eat too much into Keith's training. So I'm Rebecca Stringer, so I've got a digital agency called Funnel Metrics, which is basically all about helping businesses make the most, make better decisions over the data that they collect. Hold on. All right, and this is just some of the customers that I've worked for over the time, so across a wide range. So I really want to talk to you today about your data and how you can use data to impact on your sales efforts. So there's always the age-old conversation of, does sales lead marketing or does marketing lead sales? And the answer to that is that they should both work together. So the sales should feed into the marketing initiatives, because you are the people that are on the coalface and you understand the questions and the objections and everything else like that. And marketing should then back up the sales initiative. So in terms of data, if you just think about some of the data points that you have as a business either now or data points that you'll have in the future. So can you see my animated screen? I'm just making sure you can see my mouse moving. Yeah, perfect. So if you think about your social media and think about what you can understand from your social media. So first of all, how often are you posting? What sort of posts get shared the most often? Is there a particular day of week or time of day that means that you get seen more often or get shared more often? That's all data. So think about the way that you are marketing your efforts and see if there's better times of day to do that or better messages that work better for you. You've then got your web analytics. I'm not going to talk about that at the moment because I'm going to go into that in a little bit more data, but that has a load of information about what's going on your websites and apps. You've then got yourself or any extended sales team as well. So you, as I say, you're on the coalface, you're having those conversations with your customers or your potential customers. You know what their language is. So if there's a particular terminology that you use within your business and your customers aren't using that terminology, then change your terminology to talk to them in a way that they understand, but also think about any blog posts that you could use using that language to support your sales effort. You've also got your CRM, so your customer database. So if you think about what your ideal customer is, and you have some of those customers, think about the persona of that customer, where you found them, what they do, and then try and replicate the experience of getting that customer. So ideally you want to be getting longer customers who are retained with you over longer periods of time, but you also don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. And then footfall, clearly footfall isn't something that many people have much of at the moment, but if you do have a physical presence, actually understanding that any sales activity, marketing activity, how does that drive footfall? And footfall could also be call volumes. So you do a thing, does that mean more people come into your physical place or make calls or send emails? So this is all data that you can be using to back up your efforts. So just talking a little bit more about web analytics. So specifically concentrating on Google Analytics. So this is an amazing free tool that you can put onto your website. It immediately starts collecting a load of information about what people are doing on your website. As you put the Google Analytics onto your site, it only collects information based on the fact that people have seen a page, but it won't let you understand data that they have downloaded something or done anything other than view a page on your website. But it can be set up so that you can track those. So I just want to talk to you about a few of the important things that you might consider. So it's all about making sure that you're tracking your website or your app aligned to what your effort is within your organization, and think about what you're doing, what you're spending time and money doing. And if you're spending time and money doing something, then track it. So the first two, page scroll. So if you think that you're creating long content, and particularly as more people now browse using mobile devices, pages are much longer, people are having to scroll further. If all of your key content and all of your calls to action are right down at the bottom of the page and nobody's ever seeing them, unless you understand the page scroll, you're never going to know why people aren't contacting you or registering, or whatever the action is. So page scroll is really important, as well as things like blog posts. So if you're creating long content and nobody's ever getting to the bottom of that content, either your content's too long and you could split that up into smaller posts, or it's just too long and people aren't interested in it. So just think about what you're writing, what you're showing, and are people doing what you want them to do? The contact method. So it's really key, particularly when you've got lead generation, to understand how many people are clicking on telephone numbers, email links, or any other method like forms or anything to contact you. So from a lead generation point of view, if it's about completing a contact us form, not everyone's going to do that. So also make sure you understand how many people click on your telephone numbers and email links. Understand what people are searching for on your site as well. So if you've got a free text search on your site, understand what people are entering into that free text search, and it will probably be a very low percentage volume of your site traffic that actually makes a search on your site, but that data could be really key, because it could show you an opportunity that's something that you're not doing in your business, which is something that you could pivot to offer. Or it could also show any, in the same way as the language of your customer, what sort of language they're using to search for something. So just think about what people are searching for on your site. Consider your calls to action, so any buttons or key links on the site. So what are the calls to action, and do people click on them? And when they click on them, what else do they do? So if you've got loads of calls to action that aren't being clicked on, so they're either not being seen or it's possible that they're not understood. Your video consumption, in the same way as page scroll. So if you're creating beautiful videos, they could be, if you don't understand how far people are watching through those videos. So if you've got a 5-minute video and people only ever watch the first 2.5 minutes, your video's either too long or you've given all the information that they needed right at the offset. If you also think that the knock-on effect of having really massive videos on your website means that your website will load slower, which will give a lower performance for your audience. As well as thinking about what documents have been downloaded. So if you're creating content, so whether that is case studies or key information or whatever it is, if you're creating that on your website, make sure you understand what people are downloading and where they're downloading, because again, it helps you understand what their overall behavior is. So that's some of the stuff that you can track. There's a load more things that you can track, and it's really down to you as an individual to really understand what they are. But if you don't measure, then you can't improve. So it's all about collecting as much information as you can to make informed decisions. I'm going to introduce you to a concept called the conversion funnel, which is it's predominantly used on a website, but actually it also relates well to the sales funnel. So if you think that the top of the funnel here is either 100% of traffic coming to your website or the first engagement with your prospect, for instance, as they become more converted, they move from attention through to action. And the action here, when we're looking at a website, is your overall conversion. So that is them registering with you, buying from you, whatever the main purpose of your website is. On the way to make that conversion, there'll be other steps. So it could be, if it's about lead generation, maybe it's about finding out about you, who you work with, what you've done, how to get in touch, and then finally get in touch. So the micro conversions contribute to the macro conversion. Does that make sense? A few nods, yeah. The scary number from a website point of view is that of the total amount of traffic that comes to your website, on average, only 1% will actually do the thing that you want them to do. So 1% is an industry average. So when you're looking at your own website, it's about making, or how do you increase this 1%? And the way that you do that is to understand what these fallouts are and how you can improve it. So if you think about your sales efforts, so say for instance, you start by having a cold call, you then move to providing some content about you. And if you were to change that content, maybe actually you increase the amount of people that go through to the next stage. In the same way as on a website, maybe you change something, you change your calls to action, you put a form in, whatever it is, so that you are increasing the number of people that do the thing that you want them to do. And this is just a few examples of different types of sites, just to outline what the micro conversions are. So these are the stages of things that you'd want to track on your website, and then what the overall conversion is. Obviously for a charity as well, it's not all about donation, because it's also about making sure that you are managing your audience. So are there forms that they need to fill in, or whatever it is. But that just gives you a bit of an understanding about conversion funnel. And for you as a business, this is the number that you hang your hat on. So how much activity you do up here, the more marketing you do, the more whatever it is you do will increase or decrease this conversion rate down here. I'm just going to talk to you quickly about a few case studies which will just highlight just some of the things that I've been through. So Transalis is an electronic data interchange company that I work with. And on their website, they have this freedom calculator, as they call it, which is basically they have various products, and then their customers can go in and create a tailor-made version of the product based on their individual needs. So before I worked with them, they didn't understand which boxes were being ticked. So they didn't understand what their customer audience was. So after tracking this, they could say that their EDI Essential, which was their entry level product, was originally their recommended product. But actually it turns out that people wanted to pay more because actually the products and services that they needed were more allied to EDI Freedom. So it just meant that they could take their baseline offering up by, you know, over £1,000, and that then fit in more granularly with their offering as well, and providing more what their customer want as opposed to what they think they want. The next one is a housing association that I do some work with, and they have historically been a very, they've got quite a dictatorial leadership team. So before working with them, it was very much a case of, we think we need this content on the website, so let's get it made. And the marketing and communication, I can't even say it, the marketing and communications team were always working at 100 miles an hour. So if a directive came in from senior team, they'd stop everything and then they'd start delivering this initiative. But actually, through understanding what their audience were doing on the site, so tracking things like what sort of forms they were completing, what search they were searching, you know, what content they were searching for, what their interests were and everything, it really empowered the communications team to push back to the senior management and say, yeah, I know that's what you say that you want, but actually looking at what our audience wants, we need to do this. So because that whole conversation was backed up by data and they could prove it, they've got a lot more autonomy now in terms of what they create and how they do that. And then the final one, so this is an independent mortgage advisor. So it's all about lead generation on their website. And the conversation that I initially had with them was that they were spending quite a lot of money on social media, but the data that they were seeing in their Google Analytics showed that hardly anybody contacted them. So the first thing that I did was have a look at their view of their data. So this mortgage advisor can only operate within the UK, yet all of their data was looking at worldwide traffic. So they'd got quite a lot of spam and rubbish coming through to the site. So the first thing that I did was create them a view purely of the UK. So if you're a company, for instance, so say for instance you were a locksmith in Coventry and you're only interested in Coventry, then you should create a view of the world that is only Coventry, because that will help you understand the quality of data, the quality of traffic that's coming through to your site within Coventry, for instance. So looking at the worldwide conversion, his website was 0.2%. And as I said earlier, average industry is a 1% conversion. So it looked like he was actually performing really badly. So looking at UK only, just by getting rid of some of the noise, that took his conversion up to 1.2%, which is way above industry average. The next thing that I did was look at the fact that he was driving the majority of his traffic from social media, which was predominantly coming to his website through a mobile device. So mobile users aren't going to fill in a form. They're going to click on a telephone number, or they're going to click on an email link because it's more instant. I then gave him the ability to be able to track telephone number clicks and email clicks, as well as his form submissions, which then took his overall site conversion up to 3.6%. The majority of those clicks on telephone links and email links were from social media. Had he not done that, he was going to pull his social media activity because he didn't think it worked, when actually it was the thing that was really driving his conversions. So that's a very, very quick snapshot into data. And I think the key summary for me is that, you know, as I said earlier, if you're not measuring, you can't improve. It's about making sure you're tracking everything that's important to you as a business, whether that's on a scrappy bit of paper or whether it is in something more sophisticated like Google Analytics.
Rebecca, right on the money. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. A whirlwind tour, but a number of light bulb moments in there, certainly for me. While we're lucky enough to have Rebecca on the line, would anyone like to ask questions? Yeah, Phil.
Right. First of all, I might have a suspect for you.
Okay.
So I'll send you an email at the end of Keith's wonderful session.
Thank you.
And then you mentioned blog posts and the length of blog posts. What are the limits? I mean, what would you consider as a short blog post, an ideal blog post length, and a long blog post?
It's a really difficult thing to say that there is an average, because it very much depends on the nature of that blog post. So if it is, because obviously the length is also going to be increased by things like images, so you'd always want to make sure that you break up any content rather than it being really text heavy, breaking it up with images, which is obviously going to push the length. It depends what the blog post is about. It depends if it's a series of blog posts and what you want that audience to do as a result of seeing the blog post. As well, some blog posts are purely there for organic search. So it might be that you're not necessarily wanting, well, you obviously want people to read your blog post, but it's not as important for certain content to be read because it's about your keyword density for your blog post. So I can't answer it specifically, but if you understand how far people are scrolling down your blog posts and whether they are then following any calls to action, that will show you whether your posts are good or not.
Okay, that's fine, thanks.
Can I ask Rebecca about, you mentioned worldwide in the UK. How do you do that? How do you just focus on the worldwide or just on UK in social media?
So I lost you a little bit, and my daughter also shouted in the background just as you started talking. So sorry, could you just
You mentioned
repeat
in your last page about customers searching from worldwide, being kind of, I don't know, and then or UK. How do you make
Okay.
sure that you just focus on that one, that it doesn't
Okay.
reach unnecessary?
Okay, so in terms of the reach of your social media and your marketing activity and everything, I am not the person to give you the full strategy on how you do that. I mean, a lot of that is to do with your profiling and your targeting. In terms of the specifics of what I showed you in that last slide, that was more about within your Google Analytics. If you can have a view purely of the UK, it's really important to understand worldwide, but also to understand any local markets just to see that. So for instance, you do some social media and the majority of it is seen within the UK, and there's some crossover within other territories. It's more about the view of the data as opposed to how you do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for coming.
Fantastic. Sorry, Rebecca, probably easier if we stopped sharing at that point, that just we can see everyone on the screen then. Are there any other questions?
I'd just like to comment that I'm amazed that Ada is still up there. I learned Ada when I was a few years younger.
If it works, it works, right? So I could tell, Rebecca, from everyone's body language, something we'll be coming on to later on. Everyone was intently engaged on your presentation, and a number of light bulb moments. Thank you again. I'm really grateful. I know you're very busy at the minute, so I really appreciate your coming on board. If anyone does have any other questions that you kind of think of after the fact, I hope, Rebecca, you don't mind if I sort of gather them up and whiz them over to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was really kind. Thank you very much indeed.
No problem. Thanks very much for your time and everyone, and thank you again, Keith.
No, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, Rebecca.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Would this be, we are right on the 1/2 mark. Would this be an appropriate time to perhaps get up, have a stretch, get a cup of tea and come back? Would that be okay?
I'll have to move the cat off my lap to do that.
Yes, yeah. And take cats off laps.
I can't move because she's too comfortable, so I might just have to sit here. I'll see you in a minute.
You'll have me in tears in a minute, Jules. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, everyone except Jules. Okay, right. I'll see you back at 16:35.
Hello again.
Hello. Do you remember Ada from years ago?
Oh my God, yeah.
What
It's
is
okay.
IDA?
Sorry?
Well, this old stuff still works, you know.
Yeah.
What is IDA?
Attention, interest, desire. What's the other one?
Action.
Action.
Thank you for
Oh,
your
that's the funnel.
Yeah.
good enough. Okay, is the cat still sit on the lap?
Very, very comfortable. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. They're pretty smart, aren't they? Okay. Fantastic.
Going to be gutted when I go back to work.
Okay. Right. Am I okay to crack on? 37. Yeah. Okay. Right. Right. We're still doing that. And let's go share again. Okay. Right. So. That can be a really enlightening question. Why do people buy from you? When I was at EDS, who were in the outsourcing business, the answer to this question was only two things, actually. Given that they do deals in the hundreds of millions and billions, even at that level, the reason people buy from you is trust and price. And actually, I think we can extrapolate that to each of our businesses. Do we trust you? And have you got the right price? There is some additional research that if you've got a premium product, let's say, people will pay an extra 17%, up to 17%, to pay a bit more for your product because, I don't know, they trust you more, etc., etc. There are some big exceptions to that, but they're in the minority. iPad is twice the price of its nearest competition. First mover advantage, I guess we'll call that. And consultancy, Boston Consulting Group charge $7,000 a day for a partner versus, should we say, an SME that's going to charge between $1,000 and $1,500 a day for putting one of its people in there. But you know, governments around the world, etc., whether you like that or not, will pay big money for the right brand to come in. That can be used to inform whatever we're doing as well. Anyway, I've majored enough on that. Excuse me. So concept of two types of questions, really, open and closed. Does anyone want to, can anyone explain to me what an open question might be?
It's something that has to be answered. So, and at length, I would say. So what are your plans for the business for the next 12 months?
Yeah.
You can't say yes or no, can you?
Exactly. Can't be answered with yes or no. So open questions are great at discovery. You know, as you know, tell me about your plans over the next 12 months. We can discover lots. You have to be a little bit careful with open questions in that you want them to take you in the right direction. So your insight, do you remember we talked about doing some research on clients before? So if you can ask something that's not just too broad or too general, something specific that demonstrates you've researched your client, etc., you're going to get the right kind of information coming back that you can kind of work with. But I find closed questions, it always used to be, Phil, I don't know if you've had this in your training past, that you should ask 20 open questions before you get anywhere near a closed question. I think those days are over. Yeah, but
it mustn't sound like an interrogation, Keith, you know.
Exactly.
It can't be, you know, what were you doing on the night of the 25th? You know, it's got to be a, you know, you learn how to set up the question with like a short intro, and then to make the customer feel comfortable answering the question rather than going straight into it. I had an experience once when I was a junior salesman, and I said to the guy, "So how many customers you got then?" And he said, "What is it got to do with you?"
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Lisa.
Keith, I've got an interesting use of closed questions, but this is further down my conversation with people when I'm actually trying to get them to commit to what I want them to, that I will ask closed questions where they have to reply yes, to get them in the habit of saying yes to the bit that I want them to say yes to.
Build the yeses. Yeah.
What was that, Jules?
Build the yeses.
Now that's interesting because
Early in my career, but so yeah, a well-timed. Would you do you want to see those improvements for your business? They're not going to say no to that, are they?
Exactly.
Can I just ask on that or comment on that? So I read the book by this famous American negotiator, his name slipped out, and he's got now the company called Black Swan, and his books are so amazing, and he's negotiated for FBI, people abductions and everything. And it hasn't worked at all in the UK. And that's why I emailed them saying, does your technique actually work all around the world? And all that technique is about getting people to say no, getting people to listen to people, what they say, and then repeating the last 3 words, not asking questions, but just assuring what they're talking, repeating their last 3 words, and then making these people to talk further along the line. And it's very interesting. And one of the questions that he said will always finalize every single trouble is, how am I supposed to do that? And I tried it. And in here, when I'm offered prizes and something, and people just even never reply to me back on that email. I think they're just confused why I'm even writing that. But his strategy is about only getting no's, and it's just really funny. And I went on that training course. I paid for 3 sessions, and then I didn't continue further because I thought it's not going to work in the UK. But it's opposite. It's all opposite.
Build the nose.
He said only no's. I will get his name and I'll send you. He's like the biggest.
Please do.
Yeah.
But I suspect what they're doing, Liga, is they're actually achieving the same thing. You are getting your prospect or the person opposite you into the state of mind to take the action that you need them to take when you want them to take it. In where are we? In Masterclass number 6, I'm going to come on to negotiation and closing, and I use something that I call an agreement staircase. And I think it was Phil, actually it was Jules, that was talking about yeses. So you get them in the habit, condition them to say yes. Do you want this in black? It doesn't look great, and like, have you got enough room in your sitting room for this telly? Or yes. Get them in the habit of saying yes. If you're not careful, it can come across as tricking them into saying yes in the end. And so we have to be a little judicious in and sparing in how we kind of use that. But the principle is really important and powerful. So asking great and insightful questions that makes it look like you've kind of rehearsed or researched your particular client, and closed questions around their strategy, etc., can be really, really rewarding in terms of, so is knowledge power, which certainly Richard Nixon thought it was. I would ask the answer that the answer is no, but the right knowledge applied in the right way is powerful. And certainly Oliver Stone, who's the political strategist, thought that way as well. in the right knowledge applied in the right way leads to successful election outcomes. Okay, so I've talked about discovering, answering questions, getting information. I want to talk about vocal tonality now, the way that we use our voices and emphasize, because this is about communications at the end of the day. And I just want to make sure this is going to work. So I've taken a very mundane sentence here. I did not say he bought a new laptop. And I've used deliberately, by the way, he in that for a reason I'll come on to in a second. So we, depending on how we use our tone of voice, can give the sentence a whole new meaning. So I did not say he bought a new laptop. Someone else could have said it. I didn't say that. I did not say he bought a new laptop. I didn't say that at all. I said something else. That just by changing the emphasis in that sentence changes the total meaning of what's been said and what happens. I did not say he bought a new laptop. I merely implied it, or I suggested it somehow else. I know this is a little bit abstract, but I just want you, just by changing the emphasis in that sentence, can bring about a total new meaning, which could lead to the correct understanding or the incorrect understanding. It did not say he bought a new laptop. It was someone else. Someone else bought a new laptop. It did not say he bought a new laptop. They could have leased, rented it, stolen it, whatever else. I didn't say he bought a new laptop. It could have been secondhand. It could have been refurbished. It could have been all sorts of other things. So what? And finally, but you got the message. I didn't say he bought a new laptop. He bought a new tablet, iPad, television, whatever it happens to be. Important thing is we've taken a mundane and potentially, useless bit of information, but it can have 8 or 9 different meanings, and that's just scratching the surface. That's the point. So how we phrase our words are incredibly important. Again, going back to being on a video call where we've got very little body language going on, facial expressions and hand gestures maybe, but you can't tell whether I'm folding my legs or what I'm doing. But I will stand up and demonstrate I'm wearing trousers if that would help. But because but anyway, so you don't know what's going on. Anyway, that's my point. So the voice, what you emphasize in your communications is really, really important. Okay, right. So you recognize this by now. This is a value stack, and you recognize the letters within it. Me too. Difference. We're building value as we go up the stack. So some of the questions that you can ask with your clients. Forgive me 1 second, excuse me. That you can ask. Say you've got an incoming call, or you're in a meeting, or whatever it happens to be, and you've got someone sat opposite you that looks like a prospect or a suspect, if you like. You can ask, what are we doing here? What's the scope of the conversation that we're having? These are all questions that your competitors can ask easily. They don't differentiate you from your competition. When do you want to buy it? When does your lease car agreement run out? When does it expire? And I'll phone you up the day before and all of that. So they're pretty basic. There's nothing scientific or terribly advanced about that, but they are important questions. That are helpful for us to know those things, but they're not going to differentiate you. And also, the one that I really disliked asking when I first started out in sales is how much money you got, because it takes me back to my childhood. We're back there again, early childhood stuff going on that I couldn't ask my parents for money. We didn't have any. So asking money was a real big hang up of mine. And here I am, 56 years old. I think I'm over it now, but actually not that many years over it. I can assure you of that. So these are questions that we should know. Now, interestingly, Liga, I'm just thinking about your target market of high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals, and they're clearly not going to be quite so price conscious as most of our clientele donors are. So, sorry, Pauline, I didn't hear. Were you saying?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I think there might just be as price conscious. Maybe we shouldn't assume, should we?
No. Oh, right. Thank you for that.
Some of the richest people in the world some of the richest people in the world are the meanest. So
if you've ever seen
that's why they're rich.
Yeah. If you've ever seen the movie about John Paul Getty, All the Money in the World, we'll show you. Or try living in Yorkshire. Plenty of rich people in Yorkshire, but try getting them to spend any money. That's pretty tough. So what they will want though is they probably go. This is where I was going. Is they probably won't want to, should we say, scrimp on the experience. They probably will be very definite about, I want to go to that. I want to study this. They probably will be, because they're used to getting what they want. And so they probably won't sacrifice experience for the sake of money. Now, to Pauline's point, there's maybe it's not very famous at all, but certainly I'm aware of it. The Chelsea Flower Show, if anyone knows that, it's a big event, funny enough, in Chelsea with flowers. But John Paul Getty was hanging around the box office at 10 minutes to 6 with a journalist who were going to go around the Chelsea Flower Show at 10 to 6. And a journalist said, well, okay, let's go in, let's get our tickets. And Getty said, no, we're not going in, because at 6 o'clock, the ticket price goes down from £5 to £2.50 or something. But it really was. This is a guy with literally all the money in the world. At one point, he was the world's richest man. But he didn't want to go in 10 minutes early because it was going to be an extra couple of pounds. Those people do absolutely exist. And so, Pauline, thank you for, you should not assume. There are some reasonable assumptions which we can all make. The important point is, what's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to the person the other point. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that out. Okay, right. So for me, a much more powerful question, you have to, again, those basic ones: what, when, budget, how, which is how much, basically. If you can ask why someone's doing something, why do you want membership of the Chamber of Commerce? Why do you want that? That can uncover some really interesting information. So I'm trying to run 3 screens here, so I may not be okay. Right, okay, thank you for that, Lee. So that can uncover lots. Why are you interested in Caravaggio? Okay, that's one of 3 artists I'm aware of.
Can I make a brief comment, Keith? I find that you can ask, what do you want to do 1,000 times and not understand it until you ask, why do you want to do it? Yeah. You got to ask why.
Absolutely. And again, don't assume. Why do you want to do that? And it can be really enlightening and really empowering to understand why that is. And also, it pays them a compliment. It kind of shows that you're taking a personal interest. Otherwise, you become very transactional. Yeah, of course, we'll send you a ticket to the Tate, or we'll hand you over a mobile phone, or whatever it happens to be. That's important, maybe, but transactional. It's not strategic. Not going to get you to the top box, but why uncovers loads. Okay, right. So what's next?
Keith, can I just quickly again, only because of the Chris Ross training.
Liga, I'm really sorry. Would you
Can
mind
you-
leaning forward a little bit, because your microphone is not picking up all of your
Okay.
speech?
So only because of the Chris Ross training I went through, and he's like top negotiator. He said to avoid question why in all possible ways, because it intimidates and lets people to feel that they're doing something wrong. And he said every question why has to be changed to what, how, anything. And he said only there are few occasions in a life you could use why. And now you're coming to question why. And I'm almost kind of now going, okay.
Well, look, I'm really glad that you're challenging there, and I'm gonna. I don't know if you put in the chat about the book or the author or the person. I am going to make an exception here. I don't know, and I haven't seen what's going on in the chat. Hostage negotiations are very different, and if this guy's talking about negotiations, and I've got not something everyone knows about. I negotiated, and I don't know Spanish like if I should have thought of you, Phil. I got someone out of a jail in Bogota in 2017, a British subject. How they came to me, how the lawyer came to me, I don't know. I should have asked that. I was so shocked to get the call. Anyway, and I'll ask Tracy. But anyway, I got them out of jail, and I was asking, well, and now I think about it, I don't think I asked why. If you're in jail in Bogota, I think probably 90% of us could guess why you're in jail in Bogota. But I got this person out by asking the what's, how, da da da. I probably didn't ask why, because I already could have bleeding guessed that. What was going to be the issue? But if it's hostage negotiations, that is different. I don't know what's in the chat, but I will have a look, and I'm really interested to know if someone's got a different point of view, because that's the way the world works, and the world does change. But why for me still works for me. Maybe you have to be careful.
Can I modify, Keith?
Well, sorry.
Can I modify what I said then? Find out why, but don't ask why.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Now that has merit too, for sure. But actually, I'm really glad to get that. There was a guy called Bill Richardson who was the chief. He was like the chief of staff to Bill Clinton, and he was always, for anyone that wanted to meet with Clinton, they would have to meet with Bill first, and it would be like going through a negotiation or an interrogation. He had the power. I was going to come on to this in the next session, but he would have a very different way of questioning. He could afford to, because people really, really wanted to meet with Bill Clinton on the world stage, be they industrialists, be they politicians, be they charitable organizations, whatever it happened to be. He had the power. He could afford to ask really tough questions, because he had something that was, it was like the Fabergé egg of the political world. Everyone wants to get with Clinton. He could afford to take that point of view. So context also has something to do with this, but I still think this is very, very valid. But I will take a caveat that I'll study what you've been talking about, Liga, and I'll get a hold of that down. So the point is, sorry, Lisa, yeah.
No, asking why I think is crucial, because if your client has misunderstood what you are able to do for them, if you don't ask why, you've got a disgruntled customer when you actually deliver the goods and they're not what they want.
Yeah. Can I, I'm just going to tell you now, we're going to go over time. I am going to stop at 5:30, and I'm almost certainly going to have to follow this up with a separate video for a few slides. But I do think there's more value in what we talk about between the group in this context than necessarily what's up on the board at the moment. I just want to tell you a quick story about what can happen if you ask why, and that why you have to be why. There you go. Why you have to be careful. is I won a deal to build out a video conferencing facility for a British bank some years ago, when this stuff, we can do it on a laptop now, but it would cost millions of pounds, stuff like this. So the guy that I worked with, who's based in New York but came across to the meeting, was somewhere on the spectrum. I suspect he was, as many technical geniuses are, slightly autistic, but a genius nonetheless. And I wanted him to come in the meeting because what he had was really, really valuable. So anyway, so Steve came across for this meeting. We met with my main contact and the main contact's boss, who's on the board of this bank. And we'd done the small talk, which is unusual for anyone from New York, but we'd had the coffee served and all the rest of it. And the top guy, the boss, said, why do you want to, what is it? What is it you want to achieve by doing this project with us? Why do you want to do this project with us? That's basically what he was asking. And I opened my mouth to answer the question, but Steve jumped straight in and said, because we want to transfer money from your account into our account. And the meeting went downhill from there. So you have to be a little bit careful, and I'm really living that as I say it out loud now. Now, luckily, the guy laughed in the end, but I think he was pretty shocked that there was no, because there was no small talk, there was no there's no meeting of minds. So you have to be really careful when you ask. Somebody just might give you the answer, and it's not. It can be a very sobering experience. Anyway. All right, so the next point, why we ask why is, and I'll bring this to life in a second, we want to drill down. So I'll give you, for instance, because everything is about context. So I did a piece of work for a company a while ago who, and you might ask, what's this got to do with sales? Which is a fair question. They had a problem with their sickness. There was a bit of trust between me and the client that I've worked with for years, but they had a problem with their sickness absence. There are 700 people. This should be an HR thing, not a key thing. But anyway, their problems. They had an average of there's 700 people in their organization, and they had an average of 8 days off sick a year. It doesn't take a genius to work out that's 5,600 lost days of productivity, average salary, quite a well-educated organization, professional organization, average salary of about 30K a year. I think it's about £600,000 or so of lost productivity, and it's a publicly funded organization, so very sensitive about public funds, aren't we all? So at the moment, so the why do you want to do this was important, getting the number, but the drill down, the monetization, able to say, wow, take through those numbers, that's £500,000 or thereabouts problem that's worth fixing, versus another conversation that you can have with some other company about, they might have a problem with something else. You go through the math and it's only a £10,000 problem. And the point being is numbers, monetizing somehow brings it to life. It takes it away from being subjective into an objective. Is this worth fixing? Drill down, monetize. Okay, right. Or here's another high gain question for most of us. Apart from you, because you mustn't alienate yourself from the person you're talking to. Apart from you, who else do I need to talk to? Because what you don't, you have to be careful how you ask that, because what you don't want to hear is, oh no, just talk to me. Because in almost every purchasing decision, procurement decisions, investment decision, there's almost always more than one person to talk to. More about that next week. But anyway, so that's a high gain question. Now here you get into, I think, the really high gain questions, and especially as we've been, just come out of one of the most anxious periods in world history, asking a question like, how are you? That can be a real different. I know that sounds really basic, but that can be a real differentiator by actually caring about the person you're sat next to, talking with over a screen, showing that you care, some emotional intelligence, if you like. How are you can be transformative if asked in the right way at the right time. If we're talking about a project, if you like, or a program with a desired outcome, so the sickness absence thing, what does great look like to the board? What would that look like? Well, if we could get it from 8 days sick down to 6, that would be a 25% reduction. That would be real progress, and we would demonstrate more value for the taxpayer or for the rates payer. So what does great look like? Again, another insightful question that gets you, we've now all of a sudden we've got something to aim for, that we can trawl around some data that we can aim for. I'm trying to think of that in the art world as well, something I struggle with. But if we could, if the National Portrait Gallery wanted to buy some painting that was in danger of being shipped abroad, okay, let's just, I'm making this up, which is as I go along, which is really dangerous, I know, but just say I can't think of a work of art that it might be. Let's just say it was the Elgin marbles, because they come into play every couple of years or so. But anyway, what would it take? What would it take to keep them here in the UK? What would it take? And a conversation like that, what does great look like to the board of the National Portrait Gallery? Without any care, reasonable skill and care, might cost, I don't know, £50 million to keep it here in the UK. Whereas asking the board, what does great look like? Well, if we could keep it here, but only spend £30 million, that would be a win. That would be a win. Okay. That's just off the top of my head. But the important thing is, it's not just about the person that you're sat with. What does the board also want? It's a way of asking that question around, what does that look like? It can be really revealing, that kind of information. We talked about tips a session or so ago, which is external market influences, and we've got trends, implications, possibilities, solutions, stuff that's going on, which actually affects all of our markets. COVID, red lists, travel, they can all affect our business. So for instance, you may not be able to recognize revenue because someone can't come into the country and take up your service. That might affect your business in some way. And the other thing I want to talk about is bring a gift. I'm not talking about a bottle of wine or box of chocolates or anything like that. But did any of you see the Tommy Shelby sort of scene that sometimes I break down? So in that scene, he brings a gift, which is the research. He tells Billy Kimber, the gangster, something about his business that he doesn't already know. That's the gift. So, and I've got some percentages up there because back in the world of IT or technology from whence I came, and the company I worked for, Hewlett Packard, was full of really clever people, and I was able to get someone to tell me that Vodafone, client Vodafone, their IT is costing them 3.5% of their total revenue. And yeah, so big intake of breath. Now, I had no idea whether that's a big number because that's billions a year. But I had no idea whether that was a lot, not very much, in the context of their competition. Whereas the same subject matter expert was able to tell me that their best competitor only costs them 2.4% of their revenue. So that's a measure. And so therefore, if we can and that was insight, real insight for the chief information officer. He probably, frankly, should have known that. Frankly, to be paid that sum of money and not know that about your competition, he probably should have known that. But anyway, that was an example of Hewlett Packard really know their stuff around telecoms, and that put us instantly at the very top into the preferred bracket. And so you're working on the front foot. You're in a really powerful position because you've got these experts that you can wheel in. But in order to be powerful, you have to you can't just give stuff like that away. You've got to get stuff in return, and the stuff I got in return was FaceTime. Remember, Tommy Shelby says, in return for a fair hearing, I was able to use that information, that expertise, to get a fair hearing with the CEO or with whoever. Use it judiciously, but to get you a really big win. Anyway, I made a lot on that, because each of you have CEOs that you can go to use, and I use that in the politest form of the word use, to get you good outcomes, and they probably want to be used to deliver those outcomes, if it takes their organization in the right direction. Anyway, so bring in a gift, research, tell them something they don't already know. That automatically makes you powerful. If you can tell something about, even in the art world, something that they weren't thinking about. Mr. Customer, I know you're talking about this piece of art and you want to know more about it. Did you also know that there's this piece of art from a really up and coming artist that you may not have heard of? I can take you to go and see that. That's an example of something they didn't already know, and that elevates your esteem, if you like, in their eyes, takes you to a new level. Okay, right. So on listening, which we've already talked about, I've talked enough about that. It's the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. Some of that should be obvious, but I think it's worth spelling out. Listening is much more than just being quiet and while the other person is talking. It's about processing information, and without the ability to listen effectively, messages are easily misunderstood. Like, why do you want to do this project? Because we want all your money. That's not the answer we were hoping for. But anyway, many salespeople think it's about being silent, being quiet while the other person's talking. Wait for the client to stop their infernal talking. They just talk too much, and they want to jump in and give you more features. We've already talked about benefits and features, or features and benefits rather. We want to be talking about benefits, which means that you can look fantastic to your friend because you've got a triptych from Freud on your front wall. God, I really am exhausting all my artistic metaphors, but anyway, I'm trying hard here. Right, so okay, so jump in with benefits, not features. Okay, right. And I also think that silence needs to be filled, and as I hope I've kind of shown, it doesn't. Okay, right. So about listening, yeah, we've done all that. Demonstrate professional excellence. Understand, yes, we've done that. Good listening, yes. What's left? So pay attention to what's not said, or only partly said, and but only if it takes you in the right direction for you. Does it take you closer to a deal, or does it take you down a cul-de-sac, which can be very hard to reverse back out of? Okay. So look, body language. We talked about the Meridian pie chart, where the words that are said are only 7%. Everything else is around listening, active listening, and observation. Right, yeah, okay, right. I'm not even going to do that, but that was painful. I missed the plane. 5 of my team went. I had to dial in an hour. I only got the audio, not the video. I was absolutely exhausted. I had to use all my resources to listen what was going on in the meeting. My own fault. That will teach me for forgetting my passport. Okay, right. Only time. Okay, right. So, all right. Come off of mute quickly What do you think is going on? Have you seen this photo before? Did I ask you that before?
The beginning.
What's going on in this photo then?
She's listening to him intently.
Too intently. She's not sure. She's tilting her head, holding her cheek. She is trying to understand, but not convincingly.
Yeah, I don't think she's convinced.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Who's in the more powerful position?
She is.
She is, because she's leading the conversation. She's asked a question.
How do we know that?
You know, I don't know.
Lean forward a little bit, Liga, because I can't quite hear you.
I don't know who, but I think she's confused. She is tilting head, holding cheek. She's just trying to look like she knows what's happening.
Yeah.
In her hand, so she could be taking notes, so he could be leading. I can just about see maybe a piece of paper or a notepad, maybe.
Yeah, well observed, Pauline.
Or maybe she's interviewing.
Great. Now, I don't know, because I just picked this up from...
If he's teaching something, she doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
I must show you a photo of this, of what's on my laptop right now. So, okay. What do we read anything at all into the fact that he's wearing a jacket and she's not?
Nah.
No.
Not in this day and age, I don't think, but you might have done years ago.
Well, if he comes to interview, he will probably wear the jacket.
Yeah, that's true. If he's the
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one.
If he's the candidate in the interview, she's more comfortable in her surroundings than he is. So maybe they're in their offices and he's the visitor kind of thing. That's what I read. But actually, we can't know the right...
Like,
Sorry,
so
Emily.
she's probably been in that setting a bit longer, so it's probably a bit hotter and she's took off a coat or whatever. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Body position, head. You see this on political interviews all the time. Politician will be sat bolt upright, probably with hands clenched and with their ankles, and I kid you not, with their ankles wrapped around the legs of the chair, really trying to control their body language so that they don't, what psychologists would call, leak. So don't give anything away. They hold their head rigid, bolt upright like that. And in fact, if you saw Have I Got News for You with Victoria Coren a couple of nights ago, there was a fantastic piece from a politician on there. You thought you were talking to a robot. I mean, his lips hardly moved. But it was a fantastic piece of observation. But anyway, here we've got leaning in, so that suggests interest. We've got head resting on, so kind of curious or intrigued, not sure but they're certainly thinking, not sure I believe that. They've got a pen, they're holding what looks to be a pad of some kind, so they're probably going to be writing stuff down. So I took it that she was perhaps the interviewer, the hiring manager, and the person with the jacket on, which suggests they're not quite as comfortable as the woman is, that they're the interviewee, so the candidate, if you like. So the hand position, the head tilting suggests engagement and interest, and it can be different with whereas the man looks as though the head is bolt upright, maybe leaning in a bit, but it's certainly not tilted. Okay, right. So yeah, I've already told you about this earlier on. So understand what kind of person you're talking to. It's not Honey, I'm Home, which is the line most people think of when they think of that movie. It's Here's Johnny. That's actually what he says when he puts the axe through. Now, so what I mean by that is, and first of all, there are more psychopaths in the boardroom than there are in prison. That's a fairly well-known statistic. But there are a number of different types of people that you can be engaging with. Now, most of us are in a sort of sales capacity or fundraising capacity, or sales is one of those things. So we generally tend to be perhaps a little bit more gregarious or kind of outgoing, but not every single customer behaves the way you want them to. So I'm going to talk about, here's Donny, that's what they showed up.
I miss the old days.
Yes, it did. So I had this customer who, I'm not going to tell you his surname, but anyway, he's called Frank, Italian American. He was the CIO of a big bank. And I think the longest meeting, and he spent millions of dollars with my company. I mean, tens of millions of dollars with my company. The longest meeting I ever had with him was about 7 minutes. And there was never any small talk. No, how are you? How's the family? Da, da, da. And never. And in fact, most of the time, he was looking at his screen, doing his email with the occasional yes, no. And I had to be really judicious in terms of the questions that I asked. So you can meet people like that, just a little bit kind of crazy, but I'm not about to change the way Frank behaves. I want Frank to trust me and tell me stuff that he's not going to tell my competitors, so that I can act on it and get more business for my company. So it's a fairly self-serving approach to take. And I'm guessing if we think about it long enough, we've all met someone, or even many people like that. Let's not go any further. So anyway, these people are very focused. They have low amounts of emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. They hate small talk. They want to get to the point. Stop giving me facts, make points. That's where they're at. And you may have other words to describe them, but we won't go there. Or you can go to John. Again, first name was someone else I dealt with a German bank, who frankly used 100 words when 3 would probably have done. The polite way of calling that would be methodical, or loquacious, or verbose words I would probably more accurate. The point is, we're back to communication happens with the other person when the other person understands. So my communications needs are second to theirs, because they've got the money. I want their money in my account, just like Steve said from New York. And I've got to adapt to the person that sat opposite me to present them with information in the right way that's going to get them to take action. Conscious of time, but that's such an important point. And this is not about ethnicity, it's not about wealth or poverty. Different people think in different ways. Some are more analytical than others, and it's up for us to understand, who we're talking to, and we have to make that kind of decision, if not that informed decision, often within seconds of talking to someone. If that sounds scary, it can be, but actually, and that's why I talked about mirroring. Funnily enough, we're coming straight on to mirroring. Okay, there's only 5 minutes left. I am going to try not to exceed that. I'm going to have to move on to something else, but I will. This is mirroring. Has anyone come across mirroring behavior before? Okay, so
Chris was.
Sorry, what was that?
Chris was.
Okay, so mirroring. This is you can YouTube this. This is Lucille Ball and Harpo Marx. Obviously going back a long time. One of the most brilliant sketches with no talking in whatsoever. Lasts about 5 minutes. Incredibly powerful. It's a comedy, but it's incredibly impactful as well. Okay, so it's mirroring is generally non-verbal behavior in which one person unconsciously imitates the gesture, speech patterns, or attitude of another, and they do this as a sort of a mirror. They're two different people, but they look as though there's one person looking in a mirror. You can Google that later on. Now, often happens in social situations, particularly around nice, and particularly around. Let's see what your cat had for breakfast. Anyway, so anyway, mirroring often happens in social situations. Fantastic, particularly in the company of close friends, or if you're particularly close with a client or family, or often on a date. So I don't know if anyone watches a program on telly called First Dates or something like that. My wife absolutely drives me mad, but it's interesting from a human interaction perspective. You can tell when a date's going wrong because they will, and they won't even realize it until you play it back to them on camera, that actually they're adopting, they're drinking at the same time, they're taking a slip from their coffee at the same time, they are, I don't know, playing with their hair. I haven't got enough hair to play with, but anyway, but they're curling their hair. You're thinking, what's this got to do about business? It's got everything to do with business, because it's about I'm going to go into what it's about in just a second, but it can also occur when you're getting on very well in a business meeting. You can notice mirroring going on. Anyway, so next thing, just quickly, the last couple of minutes, what's going on here? Anyone, or shall I just follow? Okay, Emily.
I think it looks like he's kind of trying to chat her up, or yeah. She seems a bit reserved, but they look comfortable. He's kind of leaning in. She's kind of reserved.
She's smiling though.
Sorry.
No. She's smiling. They both look like they want to be there. Yeah.
Eye contact as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, I've got it in my head that there might be work colleagues. So there's some familiarity already because they're sat quite close. They're facing it. Their bodies are facing each other, much as you can do on a sofa. The woman's arm is across, almost as though it's a barrier in the way. So I'm guessing with his arm is extending into her space, and that suggests that he's more interested than she is. That's how I interpret that. Her arm is coming across almost as a barrier, like they're sat across a table from each other, but their cups of coffee or tea or whatever it is approximately the same height. And that's interesting as well. Okay.
They're just both right-handed.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
They're just both right-handed. So she wouldn't hold her cup in her left hand.
Yeah.
Who said that?
He's kind of trying to mirror her though, because he wouldn't be holding it up so high with it.
But they're drinking.
You're trying to get me into trouble, Julie. You are absolutely right. Of course, she is right-handed, and I don't know what to say to that. You're absolutely right. She could be right-handed, and that could.
I don't understand that, Julie.
The point is,
I'm glad Julie said that. That's exactly what I was going to say. There's nothing to see. It's just she's right-handed. How would she hold him up? She's got to hold it over there. He's leaning, you know. He's like, oh man, I'm so tired.
I've been owned. So I think you are absolutely right. And that's the trouble with asking a question is sometimes you get the answer.
Maybe they've just said cheers.
Sorry, what was that, Pauline?
Maybe they've just said cheers to each other with their cups.
Thank you for getting me off the hook. Perhaps normally left-handed, but she's doing it right-handed just to say cheers. So
well, I'm left-handed, but it depends where I'm sitting. It's got me thinking now, Jules.
Thank you very much. Okay, right. Okay, the important point is about mirroring is it aids rapport between parties. It facilitates unconsciously all those things that we need, trust,
Be conscious of it.
communicating, conscious trust, communication, all of those things, mirroring helps, really helps. Now, to what degree they're mirroring, we can sort of argue about, but they are mirroring in terms of the bodies, left-handed, right-handed, who knows?
There's like a way as well that you can kind of, this is going a bit really psychological, but depending on where people look as well, can tell a lot as well, whether they're lying or other things.
Well, it's certainly, absolutely. But these two appear to be looking at each other in the eyes. But again, we don't know the right answer or the wrong answer. This is just to bring on debate as such. So Establishers Report is to make people feel comfortable. I would argue they're pretty comfortable talking to each other at the very least. That's a little bit too cozy for a client-vendor relationship. I would imagine it's an office relationship or something going on there. Aids communication flow, we've already talked about, is mainly non-verbal, but not necessarily, it can be verbal as well. No time to go into that at the minute. I'll do some more on that afterwards. Because telephone, I without video, but telephone can be incredibly important as well. But the important thing about mirroring is just be careful, because it can feel creepy if the other person kind of figures out what's going on. That can feel really uncomfortable and can totally undermine what you've been doing. Phil, one last thing.
I was just mirroring you, Keith.
Thank you very much. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Julie, anything smart to tell me?
What's that?
Anything smart to tell me? Oh dear me. Anyway,
that's why I'm here, to learn.
I just like to make trouble.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, so
seriously, I've got a lot of experience of this mirroring. I learned this early on, and I was selling on the telephone. I'm from the south, and I was selling to people in Yorkshire, and I actually found myself adopting their accent and the rhythm of their speech.
Yeah.
Yes, same here, Phil.
By accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to speak to Edinburgh, and I would end up with a really good Scottish accent at the end of it.
When they say "nay bother," I love that.
But the other important thing is that as salespeople, we're all actors and actresses, and the ability to communicate on all levels means that you can speak to Joe Bloggs Engineering in language and in just the manner of speech that is acceptable and helpful to him, as well as you can speak to the CEO of the big multinationals.
If you're a smart salesman, yeah.
On his level.
Yeah.
And having some sort of character and intonation. I was going to say, when you did that piece earlier, it was taking me back to when people were first doing webinars during Zoom, and it just turns into like the Charlie Brown voice. All I can hear is wah, 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 wah. All the words just merge together. So that you've got to have some cadence, and you've got to have some character, and that's it. As long as you stay your authentic self, then sure, you can switch little bits on and off as you need to, but you've got to stay authentic. But you know, it's got to be interesting for people, hasn't it?
It absolutely has. I hope this has been interesting to
Yes, no, you're great. You're great.
Very good, Keith.
All right. Listen, thank you so much for your full-on engagement. Asked some great questions. I'll get this recording all rendered, and I'll follow up there. And only a little bit more to do on video, but I need to let everyone kind of go now. If there's any questions at all over what we talked about, and you want me to cover anything off, fire them to my email, and I'll follow up as soon as I can. But have a brilliant rest of day, stroke evening, and very much looking forward to see you all next week, including Jules. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye now.
Everybody.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.